Hey folks, this is the Professor, Prof Plays Games, doing a solo episode here for the RPG Backlog. The RPG Backlog is a podcast series where me and a group of friends go through a video game from our backlog that is a role-playing game. Play it together, talk about it, have some fun. We've done Undertale. The next arc that comes out next week is Final Fantasy Adventure for the Game Boy that was re-released for the Switch in the collection of Mana. And in the past, we've also done Final Fantasy 12. In the future, we've got Witcher 2 coming up. There's Mass Effect on the horizon as well. But in between the arcs, I like to do solo episodes, kind of hearkening back to when I used to do the Prof and Dev Play Games podcast by myself. Just me talking to myself in my booth. And I'm tackling something, a new kind of interstitial series called An Evening With. RPGs are huge, as we know. Anywhere from 10 hours to 50, 100 hours. Baldur's Gate 3 last year was 83 hours for me, for example. And sometimes you have a ton of time to invest in these RPGs, and then sometimes you want to get into these RPGs, but you don't have a lot of time. So I've decided to tackle part of my backlog in this way, An Evening With. Basically picking up a game for an evening, checking it out, and then reporting back. And what I've started with for this episode, this is Yakuza 0. Yakuza 0 is a game that was released in 2015. It acts as a prequel to the Yakuza series. I believe there was Yakuza 1 through 6 or 7. And then there was a couple of like Ishin, Like a Dragon Ishin, Yakuza, the man who forgot his name or something like that. There's a lot of different Yakuza games. Then we had Like a Dragon. And then Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. And Like a Dragon got a ton of great reviews, got my attention, and I picked it up, but I hadn't started playing it yet, so this is another one in my backlog. And then I recently picked up the sequel on a pretty good deal, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which came out this year. It was like $20 or $22 on Woot a couple days ago. So what I wanted to do was get into the new ones, Like a Dragon. I know that Kazuma Kiryu is not the protagonist there. It's Ichiban. But I felt like I would be missing out on something if I didn't play the original Yakuza games. So then I went and looked at how many Yakuza games I'd have to play to get through to Like a Dragon, and it was a fucking ton to get to Yakuza Like a Dragon. And there's no way that I was going to play through all those games. But I do want to kind of get a flavor for them, a taste for them. So I decided to go back to the beginning and figure out what the beginning was. And through my research, the beginning ended up being Yakuza 0, which is a game that was on my backlog on Steam. So I played it on the Steam Deck. I actually, even though I'm starting this as an evening with, this was a game I played for a couple of evenings. I played for a total of 8 hours. And I want to dig into what I thought about it here and kind of get into who I think Kiryu is and what I can pull out from just an evening with this type of game that I can apply later to Yakuza Like a Dragon or whatever. And perhaps I will play an evening with Yakuza 1, Yakuza 2. We'll see. They're all on Game Pass, so I could pop in there and do that. But yeah, so Yakuza 0, it's a game developed by Ryu Ga Gotoku, which I think is Like a Dragon in Japanese studio. This is published by Sega. Yakuza 0 ended up being the 6th entry in the Yakuza series. It was a prequel to the original game, so it came out after Yakuza 5. PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, 2015. And Yakuza, at least originally, the Like a Dragons, I think, have changed the formula a little bit. They were action-adventure beat-em-ups, third-person perspective where you're running around Kamurocho, I think primarily. Beating up dudes, throwing bikes, having these over-the-top fisticuffs. As I was playing Yakuza 0, you're able to access like extra abilities and powers to kind of soup up your attacks to add some fire or add some extra damage. to your attacks. So there's really this idea of the brawler. It's not really a side-scrolling brawler; it's an RPG brawler, and just it's kind of over the top. And I think the series is known for being over the top. A lot of the podcasts that I listen to, people talking about the Yakuza games they've played that they've loved. Really, the over the top combat where you can pick shit up, pick random things up and throw them, but also just the mini games. You're able to walk into Sega arcades and play classic Sega games, for example. There's karaoke. I played a karaoke mini game in Yakuza 0. There are also, I believe, like idols or some sort of dating, some sort of risque side games that I didn't have access to. I didn't play. But in Yakuza 0, you can pick up these cards, which are, I think, of idols that are sort of risque that you can do something with later in the game. I didn't get to that part. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot packed into these Yakuza games, and that came across in Yakuza 0. Yakuza 0 focuses mainly on two characters, and it's Kazuma Kiryu, who's the main character, the main protagonist of the whole series. And then there's a recurring character who I don't know, but he was in this game and I played him a little bit, Goro Majima. I'm sure Majima is a big character in the series. I don't know Majima, which is part of the reason why I wanted to come back to Yakuza 0 before I played Yakuza Like a Dragon, just to get a taste of who these characters are, to understand a little bit about them. So when I see them later in Yakuza Like a Dragon, I assume, or Yakuza Infinite Wealth, I'll know at least something about it. So that's the idea. For Yakuza 0, this game takes place during the time when inflation was running rampant in the late 80s in Japan. When everything was kind of on a bubble. Real estate was inflated. Stock market prices were inflated. Eventually it came crashing down, obviously. But this is during the Ride 'em High times in late 80s Japan, where just if you owned the property, your prices were going up. But if you didn't own them, you couldn't get in there, obviously. So the reception to this game originally, I think the Metacritic came in something around 85 or so. So people seemed to like it. The average, like IGN gave it 8.5, Polygon gave it an 8, Game Informer gave it a 9.25, GameSpot gave it an 8. So critical reception seemed to be decent, and sales were looks like close to 1 million around the first year is what it looks like. So sold decently, I suppose. I'm not sure what they were looking for. But my experience with this game overall was that it was, and this is going to sound obvious to people who've played Yakuza, and obviously I've heard the way people talk about it, this strikes a chord with my experience, but it just felt like a rich soap opera. This guy, Kazuma Kiryu, is basically accused of murder, I believe, and he has to leave his family, his crime family, the Yakuza family, and he does, and he strikes out on his own, and when he does, he's kind of everyone's enemy. So he's fighting everyone everywhere. So as you're crawling across the streets looking for minigames or looking to advance the plot, trying to figure out, there's a plot of land that is for there's some sort of mystery around who owns it, who's buying it, who wants to buy it, who sold it, and you're trying to figure out that mystery. That's where the story revolves, at least the 8 hours that I played, and there's just a lot of fucking dark, like, we're gonna murder people over this plot of land. We want this plot of land for some reason, and it just felt very melodramatic, like extremely, in a way that was actually quite interesting. The crime bosses, fighting with Kiryu and leading to him leaving the family and being pissed off at them, and then them being pissed off at him, and that anger carrying forward in the story. Kiryu, during those 8 hours, is someone who stood out to me as someone who has their morals, their values. They're going to stand by their what they believe in, whether or not it fucking kills them, whether or not it hurts them. Sticking to my guns is going to make life worse for me, but I'm still going to stick to my guns because that is who I am. And that's what came across to me in this character, and something that I really, really liked, because that's sort of who I am in my life, sometimes to the detriment of me or my career or my personal relationships with people. Like, I am who I am. This is what I believe, and I will stick to that, even if it hurts me. Not if it hurts other people. Not a fan of that. But I will stick to a thing. I will defend someone, even if I am going to be damaged by that. And I think that's important. I think loyalty is important to me in my life, and I feel like here, even though he left his crime family, the loyalty was important to him as well. So the brawling aspect of the game is something that I'm not sure that I liked very much. There were, like I said earlier, different ways to kind of modify your attacks, but I didn't really enjoy the brawling. It was okay. It was serviceable. It was certainly different than other combat systems where you're using, Ghost of Tsushima where you're a samurai, or games where you're using a gun or whatever. It's different. The brawling aspect was fun, and the wackiness of picking up shit on the street and just beating someone like seemed literally to death when they didn't really die. They're not dead. It was interesting. There were other aspects of the game where you're walking around. I think I needed to get some information from some characters, so I had to talk to the characters and figure out what each of the 5 characters hanging around this fucking bonfire thing, burning barrel in the middle of the city, what kind of drinks they liked. And I had to go to different shops to find the specific alcoholic drinks that they liked, and they were only sold in different shops. So I had to find the different shops, figure out what was there, buy all the alcohol, bring it back to them, and then I got the information from them about, I think it was like who they had seen recently, who had seen someone near that plot of land that was at the center of this mystery. So it was kind of an interesting fetch quest, right? You've got these role-playing games where you go get me 5 chicken hides, or fucking chicken hides, chicken feathers, or pig hides, or whatever. The thing it is, you need to collect the fetch quest. Here, I was fetching different kinds of alcohol for these people. And while it's the same structure that you see in a normal role-playing game, it had a different veneer because it was these different popular Japanese drinks. There was Japanese whiskey, there was sake. So that was interesting. I felt like some of the other collectibles, like, again, the risque idol cards or whatever they were, couldn't figure out what the fuck to do with them. So I collected them for some reason. I'm sure they're useful later in the game, but I did not have anything that I was able to do with them in my gameplay, at least. And again, I only played for 8 hours. So, this whole thing revolves around that lot. And Kiryu, there was a murder in that lot, and Kiryu's framed for the murder. That's what happened. And then that lot is a piece of land that needs to be purchased by one of the clans, one of the groups, so that they can develop the whole area. If they get that final piece, then they can kind of, I don't know if it's like raise or lay waste to the area and rebuild or whatever, but they kind of own the whole thing. So they're hoping that it will get purchased so they can build on it. So it becomes like a chip that if I own this property, I can be seen as incredibly valuable to this clan. But the whole story starts off with Kiryu being framed for murder, and talking about how he went too far, and how we don't murder, but he didn't. Someone else murdered. So you're kind of figuring out who did the murder, why this lot's so important to fucking murder somebody for. And then Kiryu's kind of stuck in all of it. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that happened in this game that people who'd played the other games saw those kind of breadcrumbs for future games, but certainly I did not, because there was nothing about the Yakuza series that I know. So it was just great to experience it on its face. Like, how does this introduce me to Kazuma Kiryu? How does it introduce me to the Yakuza series? And I feel like for this series, An Evening With, I think I got the point. There is Kazuma, we have his values, we have who he is, we have what he does, we have the brawling aspect, which is the key component of the gameplay. And then we have the mini games, we have the side quests, we have the side shit. And there's just a lot of it. And I feel like this is a game where you can get lost in hanging out in the city, doing all those side quests, collecting all those collectibles and doing the thing you're supposed to do with them, whatever the fuck that is, with those cards. And I didn't enjoy it enough to keep playing, but I enjoyed it enough to get the gist of what this is, which was my point. So I really enjoyed that. So overall, that's my thoughts on Yakuza 0, an evening with Yakuza 0. I'm hoping to get to a few more Yakuza games before I jump into Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I will tackle for the RPG backlog in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this, and there will be more interstitial episodes between the arcs for the RPG backlog. Again, thanks for listening to this episode of the RPG backlog discussing An Evening with Yakuza 0. Next week, we're going to start the Final Fantasy Adventure arc. We've got me, Prof Plays Games, my friend Travis, my friend Tom, who picked the game for us, and my friend Anthony, the dev from Prof and Dev Play Games podcast. And it's a really good time having four people in the podcast talking over each other and trying to figure out what this game is and what a game from 1991 can teach us. So I'm hoping you'll come back next week to check out our Getting to Know You episode with Final Fantasy Adventure. And until then, thanks so much. If you like us, please rate us on your podcast service of choice, and I will definitely see you next week with all my friends.